Today we are talking about Mordhau, and the excellent thing about this game is that I can pronounce its name completely correctly because it's German. So that's a lovely start, and it gets better. We're gonna discuss a little bit what this game is, what it's all about, what I like, what I don't like, and if you should maybe check it out. So Mordhau belongs to the genre of medieval fighting games, sword fighting games, whatever you want to call them. It's not just swords, but it's kind of that direction. And we had a few games in that genre already. The most popular ones at the moment are probably Chivalry, Medieval Warfare, which came out in 2012, which in itself is probably held as the king of the genre, at least as far as PC is concerned, but has some issues with mechanics that are very easily abused, leading to everyone just swinging around in 360s, and also it has fairly outdated graphics at this point. The other game is For Honor, which had a completely atrocious release and then gradually apparently got better over time, but still I think many people, especially on PC, don't really like the combat mechanics and never really touched it again, and I definitely don't want to play that game at this point. Enter Mordhau, such a wonderful name. A medieval fighting game that gets the PC mechanics right and only costs $30 right from the start, as well as having a massive amount of customization when it comes to visuals, when it comes to playstyle, controls, everything you can think of. But at the end of the day, that's just what it sells itself at, but is it really that good? That's what we're going to look into today. Now, first off, a quick note, this is using the no gore modification setting, no blood, no gore. There are a few gameplay reasons to do that, which I'll get into, but the other reason is obviously that YouTube might not be too happy with the one where I can just cut off everyone's limbs and everything, so that version exists as well. If you want to play, it's the same one, you can just switch it up in the settings. So when you first get into the game, it will not necessarily look like it does here right now. I actually wanted to talk about this game on the very first day it came out because I have been playing it for quite a while, but I unfortunately experienced quite a lot of server issues. There were some problems on the first days. The devs were very aware of that, and what they did is they gave everyone who played on that day a fair bit of a gold refund, in-game currency, so you can buy a lot of stuff from that. It was a very generous amount, so I would say they very much acknowledged this and apologized for it. But it meant that at that point I couldn't test the game as thoroughly as I would have liked to, so I figured I'm gonna learn it a little bit more, I'm gonna play it a little bit more, and then I can make a better judgment without all the lag and the jittering. Now, one last thing that I would like to mention before we get into the more review-ish part is the question about microtransactions, because I know a lot of people want to know with new games, do they have microtransactions, especially with that price tag? And for now, Mordhau does not have any microtransactions at all, and the developers have said, if we ever think about post-release stuff, it will never be pay to win, and we will always talk to the players to get a fair system that everyone is happy with, plus releasing free content post-release as well. So, off to a promising start. But what is Mordhau? As I said, it is primarily a medieval sword fighting game, but again, you have different types of weaponry. You don't necessarily have to be a frontline fighter either. There are many ways to play the game, and there are three different modes. You have the frontline mode, which is two factions fighting against each other over territory. If you've ever played World of Warcraft, then you're basically familiar with a battleground system like Alterac Valley, that kind of playstyle, or obviously if you play games like Chivalry, then you would know it from there already. Then there is also a Battle Royale mode. I don't think I need to explain what that is at this point. You start on your own and you fight others, and the last one standing wins. And then you have a Horde mode, where you have hordes of enemies coming at you in waves, and you get better items for the currency that you earn while fighting them. In the frontline mode, you can create a custom loadout beforehand for your character with different weapons, with different armor, playstyles and everything. We get into that a bit in the pros and cons as well. But the other modes basically start you out with nothing and you collect your stuff over time. There are also LAN modes and similar things, and there are also custom servers that people can create. So for example, servers with no team damage or something like that, though as far as I know, you don't actually get gold or XP there. Now let's talk a little bit about the ups and downs, the great things and things that need improvement. The great things, and I mean great, not good things, start with the tutorial. I know I've recently praised the tutorial for Apex Legends, and I gotta say, the one for Mordhau is not quite as lively. But it's very, very helpful in learning the game, and it teaches you a lot of very in-depth mechanics for a beginner. I was actually surprised, and it took me a while to get through the whole thing and figure everything out, as it really shows you how to play with all the mechanics in the game, on a basic level at least. Of course, there's more advanced techniques at some point, but until you get to that point, you have a lot to practice with what you learned in the tutorial until you can even execute that properly. The fact that it doesn't take itself too seriously either and even throws in a trebuchet meme here is just a bonus on top of that. The next very, very big plus of this game is the overall combat system. It's actually crazy how much different variation you will see just in a single fight between good players. You have different ways of swinging your weapon, of stabbing with it, of faking attacks, of dodging if you spec into it, of blocking, of kind of channeling into the enemy's attack, of kicking. So there's a lot going on just in a very basic fight with basic weapons already. And outside of that, you even have different grip variations. So some weapons can be thrown, which is also super cool, just throw your sword at the enemy. And some weapons have an alternative grip. So for example, some of the bigger swords can be held in the Mordhau grip, which is what the name comes from, where you hold them by the blade and hit the enemy with the handle, and that deals increased damage to higher armor. So you can adapt your grip depending on the situation, the playstyle. Some weapons have quicker stabs, for example, as well, and then always some downside in return. So very, very cool, unique mechanics and playstyles that you can adapt on the fly as well. You have archers as well, but if an archer gets into melee fight, they will lose their weapon if they don't swap off it quickly enough. And what's especially cool is that Mordhau also made a great effort to remove abusal mechanics. So for example, if you try to swing around you in a 360, then your weapon will possibly still connect with the enemy, but deal very little damage because the swing damage would be too weak at that point. And you can't do the sword spamming overhead as you could do in Chivalry as well. So they really focus on keeping the fight fair and try to pick out any mechanics that could be abused, and I'm expecting them to do that in the future as well if other mechanics come up. The next big plus is the feeling, which I guess kind of ties into the combat system a little bit, but it really feels like you're swinging your weapon. I've not felt myself moving this much while playing a game in a long time. I really basically sometimes swing around on my chair when I do a swing, trying to dodge the enemy because you really feel like things are coming at you and the hitboxes of the weapons are where the blades are. So you don't just automatically hit an enemy, you can end up hitting their blade if you aim wrong, or you can end up hitting their shield, and it feels very impactful. I honestly think it would be fantastic if this game as a whole would work in VR. I know that's not possible yet, but like this, it's already as close to that as we can get for now, I feel. And it's super well executed, super smooth as well. I could go on about this for hours, but let's go to the next point, and that's customization. Customization is also great. You have different voices you can choose from that you can adjust in their pitch. Then you have different weapon types that you can buy all kinds of different weapons, like something for everyone. You have different colors for every weapon, every armor that you can choose, and you unlock some when you get to a higher level. And then you have different types of armor, of course, so you can definitely create your own character the way that you want to. Some of the things are purely cosmetic, while other things give you actual benefits as well. And then you also have a similar variety with the loadouts in themselves. You can have a character that's heavily focused on armor, but you could also have a character with no armor at all with other perks instead. There are various perks that you can get that give you different benefits in the fight, like for example, fighting without a weapon, having higher melee damage with that, or other things. Completely flexible in what you want to do, but very, very unique. You can also have multiple weapons from the start, or you can choose to just go in with one sword and pick up the rest on the way. Really up to you. Another interesting example would be starting with a relatively weak weapon when you spawn, but having a perk that allows you to loot everything the enemy drops. So the moment you kill one enemy, you get all their equipment and you always get a relatively good set of gear on the fly. And that allows for very unconventional playstyles as well, which could basically be its own point as well. You can not only be a typical fighter in the front line, you could also be a builder, for example, and just take care of structures and repair them, or you could build catapults, or you could throw fire bombs all the time. They're literally loadouts that just focus on having ranged throwing weapons and then going in melee afterwards. There's a lot of potential for more meme-focused playstyles or for more serious ones, and there is even a perk that is basically a meme playstyle. It's a peasant perk where you lose points so that you only have enough points to wear things that peasants would be able to wear, and yeah, it heavily limits your equipment. So there's extremely funny stuff going on. You shouldn't be surprised if you see a bard going around with his loot in the first game, or you see a guy running around with 3 pants, but at the same time, even they can be a threat to you. Yet the game in itself still feels serious enough that could otherwise be a concern. It's still very, very fun. The skill curve in the game is also very interesting. Now, I will be honest, the first few games, unless you've played other games like this before, you will probably suffer a lot. You will probably get demolished a lot until you figure out where the objectives are, how the map works, and how you can actually find enemies. Because it takes a while to get the muscle memory in, and even if you come from other games, then it may take you a while to get used to the different swing times and the block, because the block is at a later point than you'd usually use it in other games, and the fact that enemies can adjust their swing depending on where they move their camera. But once you get past that initial hump, it feels very satisfying to slowly improve and slowly learn how to fight enemies and just learning to counter them out, and it's very smooth from there on out in terms of improvement. Not only that, with how the game currently works, there are also different playstyles that require a different level of skill in the game. Some are significantly easier and will make it easier for you to have a positive impact for your team, and that allows less experienced players to set up for more experienced players as well and still do their thing in the fight. Like, for example, if you're trying to cross a bridge but there are archers shooting from the other side and you're one of the players with the shield, then you can just go forward with your shield up and cover for the other players that may come through behind you, and they can kind of crouch behind you and you will shield them from any incoming damage. Another positive point is that the rewards for playing are very generous. I don't know if they might eventually turn those down a little bit, but at the moment you can basically unlock something new after almost every game you play, and that's very nice to me. And last but not least, this is a game that is definitely designed to be fun with friends. If you can coordinate a team with some friends with different playstyles, then you can really get things going on the battleground. You really don't have to. I've been playing on my own, but this game definitely can be taken to the next level by doing that. Well, obviously this is true to some degree for every game, but I think in this case it's especially true because the game itself is already very fun in many situations. And last but not least, as a relatively good point, we should also mention the graphics. Of course, it's not the best you can get, but for the price tag, I think the graphics are very good. To make a fair judgment of a game, we also need to take a look at the flaws or things that could potentially be improved. And that's what we're going to do right now. One thing that the game is really missing so far, in my opinion, is a duel mode, as that would really allow you to practice all your fighting mechanics in a 1v1. You can do that in customs right now, but for example in Australia, there is not a single dual custom server, so you don't even have that option. However, the devs have already addressed this and said that ranked 1v1s are planned for the future. So big thumbs up to them, I just hope it's coming soon. Another issue that should be worked on is server stability. While it's better than the first day, I still sometimes have packet loss for some reason. I get that icon in the corner even though my ping is fine. And I know that a lot of people have ping issues. Especially in Australia, a lot of people playing on the Sydney servers apparently have issues when they are from Sydney. So there might be some routing issues where they just have like 200, 300 ping for no reason, which is a bit frustrating, of course. So I hope that that gets sorted out relatively soon. A mode that in my opinion is really not good yet is the Horde mode. And that is because it's just not balanced at all. The amount of enemies spawn increases way too quickly for most players to keep up, and the strategies to fight against it are basically hide in a tower and shoot them with crossbows over and over. And that's really unfortunate because it would be so cool if you could play this on a reasonable level as a melee, but it just becomes very overwhelming and the progression does not feel fair at all so far, and that seems to be the general consensus on this mode. The map variety is also a little bit stale. Currently it's 4 maps that you can end up on, and I think that needs more, but this will also be addressed in the future. There are 2 more maps that are coming in the upcoming month if everything goes well, so we can look forward to that too. Now, as for the combat mechanics, that's obviously something that can always be debated and is up to personal preference, but I think there are a few things that generally aren't that liked by the community as well, which could have some adjustments. The first one are kicks. Now, kicks are a strong mechanic, so they shouldn't be too easy to confirm, but at the moment the delay for it is very high and the range is incredibly short, so it's super easy to just step back and avoid the kick that way. And I think at least if you were using like a jump kick, it should be working differently, and I think the kick needs to have some more potential as a counter to blocks. And that kind of flows into the next part. Right now, shields are a very effective counter to many things, as they don't really break, they just use stamina and you drop them when you go to 0 stamina. Now, if you wail on a shield long enough and kick the shield user down, then eventually they will drop their shield. But really, a shield, in my opinion, should have some sort of expiry date on it as well, where you can't just block over and over. There are definitely counterplay mechanics, so that, don't get me wrong. It just feels like it's a bit too good in too many situations at the start. And there's a similar thing with spears, where you can really be in your enemy's face with a sword, and they can still stab you quicker if they attack you with a spear, which technically shouldn't even hit you because you're too close to them at that point, because the animation for the spear in the stab is very quick. And realistically, you should just be able to cut their head off if you're that close, and they shouldn't even be able to hit you properly, or only for very little damage at least. So I think the hit detection with long-range weapons with stabs at very close range might need some adjustments. Another thing are fire bombs. They are just super annoying. They're the only thing that really make the game frustrating. Now, there is a perk that counters them out almost completely, but I find it weird that you have to basically invest in this perk to deal with them at all. Because right now, if you end up with a firebomb on you, there's a good chance you will almost die, or even die if you lost some health before. And when you're in a fight with someone else, nothing is more frustrating than being hit by firebombs. Arrows can be blocked, and if you get hit by an arrow, it's just fair enough, you know. I deserve that. But getting killed by a random firebomb from somewhere doesn't feel nearly as satisfying or fair or anything. And while the firebomb spam builds are funny, I don't think they should have the power they have right now over the outcome of the game. Targeting on ladders is unfortunately a little bit glitched, but that's a very minor thing. And likewise, there are some strange random death glitches where you just die and it indicates as that you killed yourself, but you were standing in one place, basically. I haven't quite figured out what might cause that, but that glitch exists. Only a minor thing as well. A bit more major is enemy detection. There are some frustrating things about that. So there are certain outfits that allow you to almost hide which team you belong to, basically. And you can make that even worse by adding banners to your outfit that are in the opposing team's color. And I have had that where I was fighting a bunch of enemies and there was this guy in front of me that was wearing the same color as I was on his leg, and I was like, okay, that's an ally then, and then he killed me. And I realized, okay, maybe not. And the same thing happens with enemies when they get hit too much. They get covered in blood. And as one of the teams is red, sometimes you will end up looking like a member of the red team, even when you're a member of the blue team, and your allies will start attacking you, or enemies will not attack you and be confused, and you can kill them very easily. And that's just annoying. Maybe an option would be to just change the color red into another team color, or just find some other way to keep it visible which team everyone is on, with maybe highlights or something. It's just something that's more obvious, especially for beginner players, because right now there are some frustrating encounters in that regard, and that is also one of the reasons why I turned off the blood, because that makes it a lot easier to see who is on your team and who isn't. And because of all these issues, a lot of people are just running around with a friendly perk at the moment, which reduces team damage, because otherwise that may just mess you up a lot. I think that the game overall feels very fun, it feels very cool. I hope it stays alive. It needs to have a long-term plan of adding some more content to do so, but I think it's on a good path. The only thing that I don't really see surviving is the Battle Royale mode. It just feels too much like random luck, and I just think that the concept of Battle Royale is something that's getting very, very old. And I personally would be surprised if that becomes the primary mode, but then again, you never know, with streamers and everything, they might prefer that mode. We'll find out. At least in Australia, the wait times for that were way too long to make it worth it when you could just get bodied by RNG, basically. So yeah, I really hope Mordhau makes their plans for the long run, and if they do, I see a lot of potential for this game. So my overall verdict for this game is very good, especially considering the price. It's very, very refined at this point already, I would say, and I really hope the devs keep up with keeping the mechanics fluid and making sure that none get overly abused at some point, and also adding enough content for people to stay interested in the game and give it a little bit more long-term sustainability. As some of you may be wondering if the game is available for consoles as well, it is not so far, and the team said they will see what is possible post-release. They will have to see how good the game is received, because it's a relatively small indie studio, and if they will have the resources to do a console port, and if they do, they will definitely look into it. So, simply put, the more popular the game gets at the moment, the more likely it is to come to console. With that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this gave you a little bit more of an idea about Mordhau and if it's worth playing for you. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell. It really helps me out. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.